Okay, so I'm Joel Obstfeld. I'm one of the team who's responsible for a product called Vyral, the Virtual Internet Routing Lab. What we're going to be doing on this vBrownBag session is showing you some of the power and the capabilities of Vyral, but I want to talk a little bit about what was the impetus behind this, what are we actually trying to do. Many of you will know when you're working with expensive networking equipment, there's never enough of it. There's always, whatever lab equipment you do have, there's always a lot of people who want to make use of it. And it's always the case of, take a ticket, form a queue, and if you're at the back of the queue, it's just very, very frustrating. But do you always need physical lab equipment? What we're providing with Vyral is an environment where you can take a virtual machine that's running the operating systems that you see on your physical gear. So today we have virtual machines running iOS, iOS XR, XE, NXOS, ASAV, layer 2 switching, and you're able to create very quickly and easily an environment that can be used to mock up parts of your network. Maybe you're studying for one of the certifications, or maybe it's a case of I'm looking at change control. I want to understand if I'm going to make configuration changes, what the implications actually are into my network. And we can do all of those kinds of things within the environment. So I'm going to start showing you some of the capabilities with that. So Vyral comes with an interface, this thing called VM Maestro, which is a very, very simple environment where we can literally take items, drop them into our topology, connect them up the way we want to, and then we're ready to go. We partnered that with a very, very powerful automated configuration engine. So I can literally design a network, set a few parameters if I wish, and have configurations for every node in that network already being designed, already configured for us without actually having to enter any lines of configuration. So if we draw something fairly simple, we can drop a couple of iOS instances, maybe a couple of iOS XR instances. We'll put a couple of switches in here as well. And let's say an ASA, and just for good measure, we'll throw some servers on the other side. We're going to connect these devices up. Very simple. Click and connect. And there we go. We've got a layout. We can make that look a little bit prettier. But here's the basics of my network. So right now, if I were to actually just press start, each one of those virtual machines is going to boot up, and it's as if you were sitting in front of a factory defaulted physical device. So you could log in, start configuring, and away you go. And certainly, if you're looking at things like various certifications, they're going to expect you to be configuring these things from the ground up. This is where you would actually start. But I want to quickly show you the power and flexibility that we have within the automated configuration engine. So I can take this environment and literally, without having set any parameters, build basic configurations for these devices. Or we can set options. So for example, we might say, we want to have OSPF running in here, and I might want to say, right, the devices that we see sitting up in this part of the network, here, we're going to say these devices are going to be in our OSPF area 0, but I'm going to put all of these other devices into OSPF area, let's say 1001. And we might say something like, right, these devices are going to be BGP route reflectors. So again, we can just set the parameter for it, route reflector, and give it an identifier. So we're just going to say CLUS, since we're at Cisco Live. And I'm going to say that these two devices are route reflector clients in the group CLUS. So I'm going to set up these parameters. I haven't actually configured any line of iOS configuration. We're going to fire that out to our automated configuration engine. It's going to do the processing piece for us. When that comes back, we then get, for each node in the network, the basic configuration being created for us. And we're then able to go in, make configuration changes, edits, but that configuration that we provide, that basic bootstrap configuration, as we call it, is ready to go straight away. So in the best traditions of live demonstrations, it's deciding to be a bit slow because this server is sitting out in San Jose right now. So I'm going to cheat. In the best traditions of live television, it should be a case of, and here's one I did earlier. Of course, it's deciding to play games. Okay, it is really designed to play games. Okay, we're going to restart that. bring that back up. Okay. All right, so here's a simulation that we set up a little bit earlier. So a very, very similar kind of environment with a whole series of servers. So when we take a look at this environment, when the automated configuration engines actually run, we can get, and I'll just pop this and make this a little bit larger, for each one of those nodes, for each one of the nodes, we'll get the configuration that's being created. And we're pinwheeling. Fantastic. That configuration, as I said, is a basic environment. So if I want, I can go in and make those configuration changes. So here we've got a configuration that's being created for iOS XR syntax. So it's slightly different from what you're used to seeing with iOS. But if we take a look at a node over here, for example, here we've got ASA. So for people who are familiar with a firewall, that basic configuration for the ASA firewall is now being created. And when those virtual machines boot, that configuration then gets loaded straight into the environment. So it comes up, configured, and you're ready to go. So with all these various elements in place, it said you can edit this. The idea is we're creating a basic configuration for you. It might be good for what you want right now. Maybe you want to make a configuration changes, that's fine. You don't have to use this function, but it's there to help you get up and active very quickly. So once you actually spin the simulation up, here you've now got the list of active nodes. So we can now log in to one of these devices. So we'll go in here, and we can connect in to the port, and it's just as if, oops. It's as if you were sitting in front of the physical device. You know, we can run all the normal commands that you would expect to see. So here we're running a 5.3.1, so this is the most recent version of iOS XR. We've got the full routing table up and running. So we can see here we've got OSPF routes going through, and even making configuration changes. So if we go in here, so redistribute, static, commit. And now if we take a look at one of our downstream devices, so we're going to connect in on the iOS v1. What we're doing is we're actually advertising a static route that's coming up from our ASA. So we can now take a look in here. And if we do show IP route, we should be seeing, there it is. So here we can see an OSPF E2, so an external route. So that's our redistributed OSPF route that we just made that configuration change on the iOS XR device, being received downstream from the iOS router, and that's now being passed into our network. And just to prove that this functionality is really working, if we go all the way down in the side of our network here, we've got some Linux machines that are sitting down here. So this device, we're now going to try and reach out. So we're actually connected this topology to the outside world. So we've actually got another server that's sitting out on a target IP address, and we're going to see whether we can actually connect to that now. So we can go in on that device. Let's move that over here. And we're going to try and do some pings across. So 172.16.1.254. So that's a physical device that's sitting outside on the wire. So we're going outside our simulated environment and reaching out. There we go. So it's actually reaching out, and we're seeing something else is out there too, but we're getting traffic passing up from the server coming across a layer 2 switch, or actually a pair of layer 2 switches, up through our IOSV router, up through our XL router, hitting the ASA, and we're actually doing translation on the ASA. So if we want to take a look in there, going to go in on the console port, and if we do show XLAP, here we can see the translation is taking place. So we've got the source ICMPs coming across, hitting that ASAV as if you were running with physical equipment, and that's now then passing out to that outside world. So with these kinds of capabilities, it's not a case that the lab necessarily has to be physical in every single case. Yes, there are definitely situations where you need physical gear. If you want to test ASIC capability, you're going to need a physical environment. But for many capabilities, for many of the functions that we're actually looking at, then yeah, you can actually start to use virtual machines for a range of different capabilities. As I mentioned, anything from, I'm studying from CCIE, I want to make configuration changes, I want to understand how, if I introduce a new feature into my environment, what that's actually going to do to my network. So it's a flexible, scalable kind of environment. We can run on laptops, through to servers. We've even got some guys who are using this in conjunction with these little more power devices, so like an Intel device, very, very small, highly portable. So you want to be able to take a lab with you. You've literally got servers you can throw in the back of your rucksack, take it to customer site. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavor as to some of the capabilities, but this is a really flexible toolkit. Think of it like Lego. What do you want to build? Because these are the various building blocks. Hopefully you can build something very, very interesting. Thank you.